Our top story, U.S. President Donald Trump has gone into quarantine after his close White House aide Hope Hicks tested positive for coronavirus. And the breaking news reaching us here on Press TV is that Trump himself has posted on his Twitter feed that he has tested positive for COVID-19. So let's bring in straight away our correspondent from Washington, D.C. if we can, and get some more reaction on that. Colin Campbell, let's see if he's there. Colin, you're with us?
Yeah, I'm here, and we're just getting news that the president tested positive for COVID-19, and this came after the revelation that one of his closest aides, Hope Hicks, also tested positive for COVID-19 this week, and that he was going into quarantine with the First Lady, and now it's been revealed that he has also contracted the virus. And this is after a period of time since the beginning of the year where the president has been somewhat cavalier about contracting COVID-19, daring the press to try to catch him wearing a mask, even though he did not want to many times, and then saying that people wearing masks were doing something that was rather unnecessary, which led to a lot of his followers and a lot of supporters who did not wear masks, even in very crowded spaces. Even when the president was traveling this week aboard Marine One, also Air Force One, we know that it's not a very capacious room on Marine One, but yet still we saw him not wearing a mask. We saw his aides not wearing a mask, people that he works very close with, including family members that he works with in Washington, not wearing masks. We've seen at rallies where his supporters are not wearing masks. And we do know that there was a supporter earlier this year by the name of Herman Cain, a former Republican presidential candidate, who was a close supporter of President Trump, who attended an Oklahoma rally, who later died of coronavirus, or at least in connection with coronavirus, shortly after the rally he attended supporting the president in Oklahoma. We also found out that there's several other people contracted COVID-19 from that same rally, and that people had contracted coronavirus from other rallies that the president has had. So for some, they would say it was only a matter of time before the president of the United States did catch COVID-19, and this is where we are right now.
And you know, Colin, the man who downplayed COVID so much, yet oversaw the largest death toll in the world, is now taking it seriously.
That's right, and I don't know if he's taking it seriously or not. It will, you know, when it comes to the president, a lot of things are kind of unpredictable. Will he try to play this off, sort of like how Jair Bolsonaro did in Brazil, or will he take it more seriously? That will remain to be seen. Many people wish that they knew exactly what the president would do and really emphasize the importance of wearing a mask and practice social distancing, but no one can really say for sure how the president will react to this news.
Right, absolutely. And Colin, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control's guidelines for those in COVID-19 quarantine, they're saying stay home for 14 days, stay away from others. Now, you're saying, as quite probably right as well, that Trump, like Bolsonaro, will he stick to those guidelines? Who knows? But if
That's right. Not sure whether he'll stick to those guidelines or not. Those are guidelines that the CDC has been saying for quite some time. The president has seemed to pretty much eschew some of the science coming out of the medical community when it comes to COVID-19. And we've seen that in just some of his actions when it comes to rallies, when it comes to press briefings, when it comes to being at the White House, whether or not the president really practices a lot of those guidelines that medical officials have recommended for the average person, which would include washing hands constantly, keeping them away from their faces, wearing a mask, practicing social distancing. We've seen the president pretty much not really practice all of these things very coherently all the time.
Right, but again, it depends on the severity, I guess, Colin. If he's come down with a severe COVID-19, then he probably will have to stick to those guidelines. Within that 14-day period, as you mentioned, Trump was set to hold rallies in Florida, Wisconsin, and Arizona. All three are swing states. How could this affect the campaign?
Well, this would definitely slow things down. If we remember, the election day is just a little bit more than a month away. If he has to quarantine for 14 days, that's 2 weeks off of the campaign trail that he'll have to indulge in. And of course, that's not going to be good for him at all, especially since he's trailing the former vice president in a lot of polls nationwide.
Indeed. And just, Colin, one more thing. You mentioned Trump's inner circle, his top aide has got COVID. We don't know who else. Assuming that the vice president, Mike Pence, is also tests positive, he was there as well in that with his top aide. Who would replace them?
Well, that's a good question right now. Many people are saying that the House Speaker should really be under quarantine right now, because if the president and the vice president aren't there to preside over the country and to make decisions, people will be looking at the House Speaker. But of course, this will take a congressional action to really understand who is going to be in charge if the president is not really in the public eye. But I don't believe that power will change over. It's just that the president won't be as visible for the next 14 days.
Do we know if Nancy Pelosi is in quarantine?
We're not sure at this point, but we believe that she is under a state of protection, or a state of not quarantine, but sequestering at the very least.
Right. Okay, Colin, thank you very much for that. Colin Campbell, our correspondent in Washington, D.C.